What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and today we are talking about Tenet, full in-depth spoiler review. So if you have not seen Tenet, definitely watch the movie and come back. And if you don't care about getting spoiled, then enjoy the video. But making a return to the channel is Andy. How you doing, Andy? I'm glad that you're back.
Yeah, good to be back, dude. I'm excited to talk about Tenet, one of our favorite directors, Chris Nolan. And I mean, real quick to give my non-spoiler thoughts off the bat, I thought that Tenet was really good. I agree with a lot of your statements in your review. It's a lot to get into, so that's why we're doing this spoiler review. So I mean, why don't we just dive right into it?
Yeah, we can just start up front. I mean, the movie opens with the opera scene that we see from like the trailer. I heard this was the IMAX prologue, and right from the beginning, Ludwig, I think that's how you pronounce it. Someone corrected me. Ludwig Göransson. His score is top notch. I've been listening to that on YouTube on loop. It gets me hype, and that prologue sequence I really do enjoy. And there's a little hint there. You see someone with a red string on their book bag who comes up later, and that turns out to be Robert Pattinson. And like the first time I saw it, I was just confused a little bit. I was like, okay, this is definitely going to come back later, but it's very cool, the details that were planted early on in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that opening scene, like Nolan always starts his movies off big, especially in like The Dark Knight and Trilogy and Inception and this now. Adding on to that, this might be like one of his biggest openings, especially like it was cool to see what they were doing going inside their mission, and I didn't even catch that, the little red thing, until you said it. I've only seen Tenet once. I plan on seeing it multiple times after this review, but I just haven't yet, so you're going to know more than I do for sure.
Yeah, I saw it for a second time last night. I'm planning to see it 2 or 3 more times because it's a movie that I just want to get as much as I can out of it on the big screen. But something I want to talk about is the epic action sequences in this movie. Some of my favorites have to be the highway scene. That's probably my favorite action scene. And then the airplane scene, that's what I'll call it. What's your favorite action scene?
I mean, I completely agree with you on both of those scenes. I would add on to the third act I really enjoyed, but to touch on the highway scene in particular, that scene was awesome. Like, Nolan's directing was so damn good there, and like whenever Elizabeth Debicki's character was like going so fast in the car and the doors were just like touching each other, like my heart was beating, dude. That was an awesome scene. And then of course the airplane scene was epic too. Like the score there was so good, and the actor that they got, like the dude from Yesterday, I forgot his name, like he was in charge of all that. It was cool to see like the heist and how they like talked about when Robert Pattinson was like, I want to crash a plane, and then they cut back. The editing was so good there, I thought.
When they have to hold their breath, he said, you said 10 seconds, right? And then they're like holding their breath. I felt the tension so much in that scene.
Yeah, so much.
Like,
that was awesome. That was like some like classic Nolan stuff. Also the scene when they like were on the ropes and they went up to the lady's house to like find out all the information about like Tenet and all that type of stuff was good too. So something else that I really loved about this movie was the performances that Christopher Nolan got from all his actors and actresses. So John David Washington as the protagonist, that was his name, which was really creative that they did that, was a great lead role. I even would be fine if he got nominated for Best Actor. I think he might in a weak year. I mean, Robert Pattinson, he might have been our favorite character. Neil, he was awesome.
He was my favorite character in this movie. Pattinson has like come so far since the Twilight days. Can't wait to see this man as Batman, but he's so cool in this movie. He's very suave. And honestly, he could be the next James Bond. I don't know if he'd want to do that because he's already Batman, but like he's got such swagger about him in a way. I love watching him on screen. He has so much fun in the role. But when it comes down to the plot of this movie itself, everyone's talking about how confusing it is. It's very confusing. There's no getting around that. Straight up, it's a confusing movie, but I expected that with Nolan because all of his movies are like puzzles that you have to rewatch and put together every time. You gain something new when you rewatch it. The moment for me where I realized this movie was amazing in my eyes is there's a sequence where Kenneth Branagh is like in some weird thing and you don't really know what's going on. You can't really hear him. The audio is playing back. And then they explain what the inversion is, and then John David Washington's character, the protagonist, and Neil, and all of them go into the inversion, and the moment that he walks out, John David Washington, and he's like in reverse, and then when you find out that he was actually in the car in the middle on the highway scene, that's where like my mind got blown for a little. Like I loved seeing that play out backwards.
And I mean, even hearing you talk about it right now, it's just like, geez, like that's a lot of stuff. Another quick thing I wanted to touch on in the action part that I thought was awesome was that scene when they crushed the car and the cop was like right behind them. That was part of the highway scene leading up to it, but that whole thing was just like crazy. I've never seen anything like that in a movie. But going back to like the whole Tenet of aspect of it all, like whenever they introduced Aaron Taylor Johnson and that whole other like army group of them, that was really whenever it like really expanded, I thought.
After that highway sequence happens and they continue to go back in time through the inversion process to the Oslo scene, I love how John David Washington and Robert Pattinson go in and end up seeing themselves from the past. When John David Washington realizes that the dude he was fighting earlier is himself, that moment also blew my mind because it was so cool to see the reverse of that scene and how it changed perspectives each time we saw it.
And that was really trippy stuff too. Like Nolan like did this like in such a good way.
When you get to the final like climax where one team's going forward, the red team, and one team's going backwards in time, it's crazy how Robert Pattinson's character Neil is going backwards through the sequence, and then he switches to forward time to like save them. We see them with the Jeep, and then at the very end of that, when there's that awesome like scene with John David Washington, Aaron Taylor Johnson, I believe is his name, and Robert Pattinson, and he's like, I have to go. I'm the only one who can pick the lock. I have to go back. He's like, this is the end of our friendship for me, but it's the beginning for you. That was like so trippy, and still I'm processing that.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
The score was really good there.
And then realizing that Robert Pattinson actually went back through time and he actually died on the final mission is crazy to me to even think about.
Yeah.
Very hard to process, but again, that's what Nolan usually does, so I'm sure with more rewatches, we'll see more. You actually see the red string on the book bag there of the guy who dies, which is, like I said, Neil. So that detail was planted early on. At the very end of the movie, we're still going to talk more, but just getting to the end of it, John David Washington kills Priya, and it was actually because he went back and was inverted because Kat called him, and then he saw that, so he went back and then killed her. It's like he's going to keep using the inversion process, I guess. That's what my perception of the ending is at the moment. He's going to keep going back in time to like
I think he is.
fix things. And he's actually the one who set up the entire heist that we see in the movie at the end. So
the protagonist.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
And another good scene I think that we didn't talk about yet is the ending scene on the boat with Elizabeth Debicki and Kenneth Branagh. The whole movie they're like have like an abusive relationship kind of, and when she's like stalling it out and they're doing the mission like tied back and forth, that's a great scene. And then the callback when she jumps off the boat, like saying like, I wish I could see someone who jumped, that was great writing.
And it's even more clever because there's the scene with Kat, which is Elizabeth Debicki, and the protagonist early on at the restaurant where she's talking about how she saw a woman dive off the boat, and that ends up being herself, which is still hard for me to process and wrap my mind around. It kind of makes sense, but then again, I'll catch that eventually when I watch this movie more and more. But that's just like another detail that was planted early on, and I like how she got to kill Sador because he was an awful person.
Yeah, and Kenneth Branagh's performance wasn't my favorite. I know you didn't really have that much problems with it, but it wasn't like bad, but it was definitely over the top for sure. I liked the main three more than him.
Yeah. So something I did notice about this movie on rewatch, or at least the first time I saw it, I was kind of confused as to where they were in time because after they originally go inverted and you see the highway sequence play out and you see the plane sequence play out, I was confused as to how the protagonist had the conversation with Priya without an oxygen mask, but then I realized they actually went out of the inversion and were in current time at that time for a little. This is a lot of like to process, so if you're not following, I apologize. But he has the conversation with her, and that cuts back to a boat, and you see the boat moving backwards, and you see John David Washington wearing oxygen mask, and it's like, okay, they're inverted now, they just didn't show that part on screen. So there were a lot of moments like that where Nolan trusts the audience to put two and two together. Another example of this is before the final epic climax, John David Washington and Elizabeth Debicki have a final scene, and he's like, posterity or whatever. He walks away. He's like, you stay on the boat a little longer. It shows the machines they use in red, so she kept sailing to get back to Vietnam, and then she got out of the inversion and was in present, and that's how she was able to have the scene on the boat with Kenneth Branagh. And it's just like, there's so much to break down in this movie, because I was very confused the first time I saw it, but a rewatch really, really helped me out.
Yeah, Nolan actually might have trusted the audience a little too much in this.
I think I can agree with you.
I feel like he should have explained some stuff a little more. It's not really a ding on this movie. He always does stuff like that, but I think in this one, it's more complex than Inception for sure, and Interstellar.
It's his most confusing film, I'd say. One that's going to have to take probably 5 watches to even think you have the full comprehension of every little detail.
Makes Inception literally look like easy.
Yeah.
Inception is not hard for me to follow, but I know for some people it is. I mean, I've seen it a lot of times, that's why. Yeah. But like this is just like, wow, like it's on another level.
Yeah, and the thing about Inception, it's more like ambiguous. It's like you can theorize about Inception, but everything is presented there and everything is like, it's defined in Inception, as opposed to Tenet where there's a lot that's up to you to kind of put together, which is difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Yeah, so overall, I really do enjoy this movie. It's one I can't wait to revisit for years to come. I've seen it twice now. I had the regular review. I gave it an 8 out of 10 on that. Upon rewatch, it's gone up to probably a 9, about 4.5 out of 5 stars for me on Letterboxd now. This movie's going to continue to age like fine wine for me. Every time I revisit it, I'm going to pick up a detail that I missed the previous time. But you didn't get to join me on the regular review, so you can go ahead and score it up if you want to and give like your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts would be that I didn't really have any problems problems with this movie. Nolan's a beast. He's one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite. And I mean, this is like one of his best action movies. Great roles all around. So, I mean, overall, I would give this movie a 9 out of 10 for me. Yeah. I'm really excited to rewatch this and catch things that you told me about and also expand on that as well.
Yeah, so I think that's going to do it for this spoiler discussion on Tenet. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, definitely comment down below your theories or what you think happened in Tenet. We'd be interested in hearing that. And definitely consider hitting the like button. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean the world. And be on the lookout for a Nolan ranking, including Tenet, coming very soon. And until next time, see you guys later.
See you guys.